We found this truck, buried under years of silence, not just abandoned, but completely forgotten. Hidden under a broken shed that had slowly collapsed into itself over time, as if even the structure around it had given up hope of standing anymore. Dust had settled in layers so thick that the original shape of the truck was barely recognizable. Rust had taken over like a second skin. Wood, metal, and time had all merged into one still image of neglect. It didn't look like a vehicle anymore. It looked like something that had stopped existing a long time ago, but no one had officially noticed yet. Most people would have walked past it. No hesitation, no second glance, just another piece of forgotten metal in a world already full of forgotten things. They would call it scrap. They would call it junk. They would call it beyond saving, and then they would move on. But there are moments in life where something about an object refuses to let your attention go. Something about the shape, something about the silence, something about the feeling that it is still there, even after everything it has been through. And that is what happened here. Because we didn't see waste, we saw something different. We saw structure, we saw design, we saw engineering that had survived longer than its surroundings. And more importantly, we saw a story that had not reached its ending. And once you recognize that kind of silence, you cannot ignore it anymore. Standing in front of it for the first time, everything feels still. Not just physically still, but emotionally paused. Like time itself has slowed down just for this moment. There is no movement, no sound, only the presence of something that once had life in motion. And now, only remembers it in fragments. Dust covers every surface, not lightly, but completely. As if the world had slowly tried to erase it layer by layer. The paint that once defined its identity is gone, not chipped, not faded, but erased by time itself. What remains is raw material, exposed, unprotected, and honest. Because rust does not lie, it shows everything that has been ignored. Every season it endured, every storm it survived, every year it stood without movement. And yet, it is still here, still standing in its own way, still holding shape, still refusing to collapse completely. And that is where real restoration begins, not with tools, not with noise, but with observation. Understanding what still exists before trying to change anything, because if you don't understand what is left, you will never understand what can be rebuilt. We move closer slowly. Every step changes the feeling of the space. The air feels heavier near the structure. Not because of weight, but because of history. You start noticing small things. The alignment of the wheels still exists. The frame still holds geometry. Even under damage, the design is readable. That is important. Because destruction does not always erase identity, sometimes it only hides it. And this truck is still identifiable, still original in its foundation, still holding the memory of what it was designed to be. We place a hand on the surface, cold, rough, unforgiving, and in that moment something shifts mentally. Because this is no longer an idea, it is physical reality. Something you can touch, something you can measure, something that can be brought back. And that realization is the turning point. The decision to restore is never loud. It does not come with excitement. It comes with understanding. Because once you see something not as it is, but as it can become again, there is no ignoring it. We come back prepared, not rushed, not excited, but focused. Because restoration is not a fast process. It is a controlled return to order, and order takes patience. The first tool touches the metal, and the sound immediately breaks the silence that has lasted for years. A sound that had not existed here for a long time. Metal reacting to movement, movement reacting to time, and time finally being interrupted. The first bolt resist, not because it is strong, but because it has forgotten movement. Years of stillness have locked it into place. But resistance is not permanent. With pressure, with patience, with control, it begins to shift, barely at first, then slowly more, until finally it breaks free from its frozen position. That moment matters more than it looks, because it proves something simple. It can still move. And if it can move, it can be rebuilt. One bolt becomes many, each one unlocking a different section of the structure, each one revealing a deeper layer of what was hidden. As parts begin to come off, the truck starts to change visually, not into something new yet, but into something exposed. Every layer removed reveals another truth underneath. Dust rises with every movement, floating in the air like fragments of time being disturbed. And in those fragments, you begin to see original surfaces, metal that still has strength beneath corrosion, lines that still match their original design, structure that never truly disappeared. It was always there. Just covered, just hidden, just waiting the engine is next. And this is where most people would stop, because the engine does not look like something that can run again. It looks frozen, corroded, disconnected from life entirely. But appearances are not reality. They are just the first layer of understanding. Every component is removed carefully. Not forced, not rushed, because forcing anything at this stage only creates more damage. Each piece has its own condition, its own level of wear, its own story of survival. Cleaning begins slowly. Oil, rust and residue begin to separate from metal. Not instantly, not easily, but gradually. And as cleaning continues, something unexpected happens. Original material begins to reappear. Not new metal, not replaced parts, but original structure coming back into visibility. That is the key difference in restoration. You are not creating something new. You are revealing what already exists beneath damage. Time becomes irrelevant at this stage. Hours feel like minutes. Minutes feel like seconds. Because focus removes the sense of passing time. All that exists is process. And process has its own rhythm. Rust removal begins. This is where transformation becomes visible. Not conceptual, but physical. Every pass of the tool removes another layer of decay. Every cleaned surface reveals more structure beneath. And slowly, metal begins to reflect light again. Not perfectly, not smoothly, but enough to prove that it is returning. That is the moment where belief turns into evidence, and evidence turns into motivation. The truck body begins to follow the same path, surface by surface. Not for appearance, but for stability. Because restoration is not about looking new. It is about being strong again. Primer is applied evenly, not rushed, not uneven. Controlled coverage over every surface. This is protection. This is preparation. This is the transition from damage to rebuildable. While the body cures, attention returns to the engine. Now cleaned, now organized, now ready for assembly. Each part is returned carefully, aligned exactly as before, but with more awareness, more precision, more respect for function, because now we understand what it takes for it to work again. Then comes paint. Deep red, strong, clean, alive. The moment paint touches the surface, everything changes visually. Not just color, but identity. Each layer builds depth. Each pass increases, and slowly, it stops looking like restoration and starts looking like something real again. Clear coat seals everything, locking in the transformation, protecting what has been rebuilt, giving it permanence. Interior restoration follows. Seats replaced, surfaces cleaned, structure refreshed. Because restoration is not only external, it is also experience. The feeling of being inside something rebuilt matters just as much as how it looks outside. Everything comes together, step by step, just as it came apart. But now there is balance, not decay. Wheels are installed again, and the stance immediately changes. It no longer looks broken, it looks ready. And then comes silence again. Before ignition, before movement, before life returns, the key turns. The engine hesitates, then slowly it responds, and suddenly it starts. Not violently, not loudly, but steadily, like memory returning to something that had forgotten itself. That sound is not just mechanical. It is confirmation that something once lost can be recovered. The truck moves forward, slowly at first, then with confidence. And for the first time in years, it is no longer static. The garage opens, light fills the space, and the truck moves into the world again. Not as scrap, not as ruin, but as something reborn. Outside, everything feels different, because what once looked finished is now moving again, and that is the real transformation. From rust to reflection, from silence to sound. From forgotten to alive again. This is why restoration matters. Not because things break, but because they can return. And if something can return once, it can return again and again, as long as someone is willing to rebuild it.